Hi, friends. Welcome back to episode 155 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and this week I'm here to give you some background information.
That is very clever. I like that.
Sometimes I have smart ones. I like that one.
And I'm your other host, Mike. And at the time of recording this, these are the last few minutes of my 20s. Much like my life total when my opponent's Aristocrats deck is going off.
Always target you. Mm-hmm. Always target you.
Please listen carefully.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
I like that you kept the same cadence.
Right? I had to.
Good. So we learned more about the Beetle and Grimm's secret lair. So last week we talked and we speculated that it would have more than just cards. And our initial guess, my initial guess was that it would be like popular cards in that rulebook frame or whatever that's called from AFR. But it is not that. It's half that. There is additional stuff. It's not just cards, but it is going to include 7 epic foil dragon-themed cards, a deck box, sleeves, and a life counter. And it's also a limited edition drop where there's only going to be 10,000 of these available. So I think this is also our first secret lair that isn't just made to order. Because they've always been order them now during this time frame and you get as many as you want. This time, it is not that. I also assume that you're going to get a certificate of authenticity, like other Beetle and Grimm's products. But it includes a life counter that goes to 45. So we are going up beyond 20. Ooh. And it's like a heavy metal dragon life counter. It looks like it just kind of spins on this like a pedestal that has the life counter on it. I am curious to see what dragons we're going to get, right? I mean, it's got to be like the dragon, right? We got the Tiamat.
I mean, if it's going to be like Beetle and Grimm's style, I imagined it was just like the legendary dragons we've seen so far in AFR and stuff. It would have been my guess. It would be cooler, I think, in my opinion, to see the elder dragons like from Magic. So instead of the Dungeons and Dragons, as much as I also like those dragons as well.
Well, and the new ones aren't even legendary; they're just elder dragons.
That's true. So, or the ancient, the ancient elder dragon guys.
Yeah, the ancient silver dragon. Those. I mean, they're cool, but I'm wondering if we'll get some more like Ramos as a dragon.
Ramos is a dragon. Hey, that's a good dragon that actually needs a reprint. So
this would be its third. Because it got reprinted in Commander Legends as a etched foil. So
yeah, but to see like a new artwork on it would be really cool to see.
Yeah. So seven dragon cards. You're gonna get a deck box, sleeves, and a life counter. So that goes on sale on June 13th. We'll keep you updated as we learn more about the cards that are coming in this set.
As we are moving closer to Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate release, we did get a note from Wizards of the Coast announcing some product delays, unfortunately. So if you are in the Asia Pacific region, there are some delays. The Japanese and Chinese Simplified Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate set boosters are going to experience delays and have limited availability, along with Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate commander decks and bundles. In North America, we see some limited availability issues. So if you did get your pre-orders in early enough, you'll probably be okay. But I think stores are not going to be receiving the same volume of draft boosters and draft multi-packs for this. But in terms of set boosters and collector boosters, you should be okay. In Latin America, over in Brazil, the Portuguese language set boosters and the English and Portuguese language commander decks are going to be delayed. Have a limited availability for approximately a week following release. The same thing in Mexico for set boosters and in Chile for the commander decks. And then over in Europe, we have a delay, experienced limited availability for approximately 2 weeks following release for the collector boosters in mass market. So that's the only place where collector boosters seems to be delayed. So hopefully you will not be affected too badly by delay of these products, and we'll all be able to get it in our hands soon and draft this product and open a bunch of really cool stuff and start building our decks.
What is the multi-pack? Is that the thing where you pick it up because you're taking it to a draft? Is that what that is? Like, there's like 3 or 4 of them, or like the triple pack thing?
Yep, it comes with 3 in them. The only place I really seen them at would be like GameStops and like grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah, like grocery stores where I'm checking out. I'm grabbing gum and packs of cards.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've actually seen them at an LGS before. Not that it wouldn't be nice to be. I mean, I guess they just have like an open box of booster packs and you can just buy
going to give you 3 loose boosters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah. We also have a new patron. Welcome, Chris, Commander Mechanic, my Commander Mechanic. Welcome to the Guardian Project podcast. The assignment for this week has not been assigned. Yeah. So we don't need you to do anything right now.
Well, we're going to keep your skill set in mind as a mechanic, and if anything comes up, like
we're in workshop. This is a workshop class, and what's that thing where you make? You were just talking about this past weekend where we have to make cars and drive them down
Pinewood Derby.
Is that something you do in work? I didn't take a workshop class. I made what I'm talking about.
I made a rocket powered car in woodshop class before, so there we go.
Woodshop, was that middle school?
It was.
That was junior high, right?
Yeah, junior high, 8th grade. 8th grade. I did that.
8th grade. Well, welcome and thank you so much for being a patron. We really, really appreciate your support. And everybody who's listening, we really want to thank you for being here week after week, especially our patrons. We really cannot thank you enough for what you do. And if you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/guardianprojectpod and donate for any dollar amount.
And if you are looking for another way to support the podcast or an additional way to support the podcast, whatever you are listening to the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, rate, review, and leave comments, we would be most appreciative.
We're on the internet. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. Mike, what do we have in store for our lovely listeners this week?
We have 6 weeks have passed, so it's obviously time for a new Magic the Gathering set. We finally have a full set release of the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. So we are going to go down and we're going to talk about all the individual cards that we're going to be adding to our decks, maybe some brand new decks that we're going to be building out of this. And if we have any decks that are getting a particularly large amount of upgrades or new cards, we're going to talk about that. So here we go. It's our set review.
To the gate. Yes, 6 whole weeks have passed, so we are now getting a new set, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. This is our second installment of the Commander Legends series. Again, a draftable set where you pick 2 cards instead of 1 each time you're drafting because it's got more cards in the packs, and then you're going to build 60 card decks. If you're playing it in a draft format, or you can just put them into your regular 100 card Commander decks. So we've got some new mechanics and returning mechanics. Let's start with the returning. The first mechanic here is adventure. Basically, these are creatures that have spells on them, and you can send your creature on an adventure for some ability or just a spell, and then you can cast them from exile for their creature side. And this was first seen in Throne of Eldraine.
Yeah, very cool to see this returning, getting a lot of fresh looks at adventure and even some new card types in adventure, some new permanent types that we're going to see. So very cool. The next mechanic we have here is dice rolling, something that we saw back in Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, along with unsets. Unsets, being silver border and not legal without a good Rule 0 conversation, but at least we do have all of those cards from the AFR. But we see a lot of support here, cards in all 5 colors, but particularly supported in the blue and the red category, or blue and red colors for this set. Cool to see the chaos mechanic of rolling dice here.
Yes, Goad is back. Goad forces an opponent's creature to swing the next turn at someone other than you, if possible. We got quite a bit of that. I like Goad. Keeps the game moving.
Yeah, lots of Goad. Myriad is also returning, which is whenever you attack an opponent. If that creature has Myriad, you create a token copy of that creature attacking each other opponent. So cool to see this commander mechanic returning.
Yes, and then finally, my favorite, Planeswalker as Commander. We're getting Elminster, Minsk and Boo, and Tasha as walkers. So if you are looking for a new Commander deck helmed by a Planeswalker, you've got 3 options. You've got black-blue, blue-white, and red-green. Actually, I kind of like all three of them. As commander, probably Elminster the most. Not surprising being blue-white. But I think all planeswalkers should be able to be your commander. But that's just me. Who am I? Okay.
Who am I?
Who am I? If anybody else has ever watched SNL skits when they do musicals, I say, who am I all the time? Next up, new mechanics. We are getting monocolored legendary creatures that have backgrounds, or allow you to choose a background, and we are getting backgrounds for these characters. So this is like the newest version of Partner. So I think this really actually captures the essence of D&D. Slam dunk. I actually didn't think that I liked it when I first saw it or heard about it, but I really do like it a lot more now that I've looked at it more and more. I do expect to see a lot of people building with these. There are 32 legendary creatures who choose a background, and then 30 backgrounds from a combination of both the main set and then the commander decks combined. So that makes 960 commander deck combinations in either one or two colors. And as we were writing this, Mike pointed out that you cannot have less than one color because Faceless One does require you to choose a color.
You must choose a color, and you cannot choose colorless. Colorless is not a color. I am
colorless
sorry.
Colorless is not a color. But you can draft a legendary creature that says choose a background. So you put it in the command zone, and then you have a background, which is either a legendary enchantment or a legendary enchantment creature background in the event of Faceless One. And that background also lives in your command zone, functions as a commander, is cast as a commander, and has commander tax. So it's like Partner, but the legendary creatures are all monocolor, and the backgrounds are also monocolor. So you're not going to have more than two colors, but there are lots of really neat abilities on a lot of these legendary creatures and the backgrounds. I assume this is going to be cool to see, and I also recognize, I don't know why I said also so many times there. Also know that I have to change my tracking spreadsheet to now include another column for where I have, was there a companion in the game and what was the companion? I need to have, was there a background in the game and what was the background?
Awesome.
So that I can make sure that I'm tracking them.
Yeah, and with this, there's 30 brand new, really difficult to remove commanders out there too, because enchantments are harder to remove than most other permanents in the
Much
game.
harder. See, all the enchantment removal we tell you to run, now it's worth it.
Now you need
now it's worth it. It wasn't worth it before. Now it's worth it.
It wasn't the smothering tide that's been plaguing you for the past 4 years or whatever.
The Cather's Crusades that have beat you into the ground.
The parallel
none of it mattered.
lives that are doubling everything on everyone's side of the board.
The propaganda that said, no, you can't actually. You don't have enough mana to do what you want to do. So we could go on. We should do that as a segment. Just so all funny. The awful enchantments.
So we have another brand new mechanic in this set, and that is initiative. And it's actually a brand new mechanic that is very similar to an old a mechanic that was brought to us in the AFR set as well, which is adventure into the dungeon. However, initiative allows you to adventure into the Undercity. So initiative is also obtained in a different way. Initiative is somewhat like a monarch. So you can gain the initiative by having something has to start by you gaining the initiative. It's oftentimes on an enter the battlefield trigger on a card that you're going to have, and then you can gain the initiative from someone who has the initiative by dealing combat damage to them. And what the initiative will allow you to do is when you gain the initiative, you can adventure into the dungeon. And when you are at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the initiative, adventure into the dungeon. So it's a little bit different from Monarchy, which triggers at your end step. This one triggers at your upkeep. So extra incentive to actually keep the initiative through all of your opponent's turns and everything. And you can actually take the initiative while you still have the initiative to continue adventuring into the dungeon.
I do like that. That's cool.
If you have already adventured into a dungeon that isn't the Undercity and you take the initiative, it just continues adventuring into whatever dungeon you're currently in, and vice versa. If you've taken the initiative into the Undercity and you adventure into the dungeon, it does just continue to adventure into the Undercity.
Yeah, it sounds way more complicated than it really is.
Right.
Like after I looked at it, I was like, okay, if I'm in a dungeon and I venture or initiative, you just move forward and vice versa.
Correct.
It only matters when you're first deciding. Initiative gets you into Undercity. Dungeon gets you to dungeon.
Correct. Yes.
And actually, some of the legendary creatures care about having the initiative at the end of your turn. So you can get benefits when you steal it and have it.
Perfect.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So those are the new mechanics and the returning mechanics. Let's talk about the cards that we're excited to add to our decks. The first one that I have here is Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, a 2/3 legendary creature, human elf druid for 2 and a green. It says tokens you control have tap to add green, and then it has choose a background. So I can put this in the command zone and choose a background as a second commander. So this one is actually really, really good for my Adrix and Nev Twin Casters deck that just makes a bunch of tokens. This says tokens you control, not token creatures you control. So all of my tokens of rocks or lands, all of my treasures, everything taps to add green, and I don't have to sacrifice it in the event of a treasure. Gold, I guess, would probably be better because if I made gold tokens, those don't require you to tap them. So that's probably the ultimate token that I could probably have here. But I think it's really, really good in Adrix and Nev because I'm making double of what I'm already doing. I have... is it Smuggler's Stash, which has tap to add treasure for your lands, that really crazy enchantment that we got in New Capenna. Just lots of new things that I haven't actually played yet. I just think that this is going to be really a neat add for Adrix and Nev at 3 mana already. It's a 2/3. It doesn't do anything unless I have tokens. That's really the only downside, but I still think it's probably worth it because I make a lot of tokens in that. I make a lot of tokens in that deck, honestly. I've got Tailrand in there. I have Essex. I have just a bunch of things, creatures that make tokens as well. And then I play cards that make tokens of my opponent's creatures. So looking forward to adding this. I think this one actually also could be a really cool commander if someone wanted to build around it.
Now, I imagine you're also going to be putting this in your Simic Clue token deck as well. Lannis, Cryptozoologist.
It would make sense to add it there as well because that deck makes a crap ton of tokens.
And because I particularly like, I know your Adrix and Nev Twincasters focuses on swinging with combat damage, so it does a lot of creatures, and creatures have summoning sickness, but your clues and stuff wouldn't have summoning sickness for adding for mana. So
that's true.
I'm thinking the same thing. I have an Abzan tokens deck that I can throw this in. I was talking about turning it into a Naya tokens deck, so it's still going to fit in there. So I can, during my rework, be able to put this in there too. This is, I think if you have a tokens deck, this has got to go in there. It's so huge.
I think if you have a tokens deck that's in green,
if you're running Cryptolith, right, you probably want to run this card too.
Yeah,
not always. Not always.
Well, I guess I probably want it for Ginny Faye though, because it works really well with all those cats I'm making. Yeah. So
and all your tokens
I'm getting at least.
Or no,
that's if I make cats, they have haste. So this is a second Cryptolith Rite at 3 mana. It's probably worth it. Although Cryptolith Rite lets you tap for any color. This is green only, and that is a 3-color deck.
Yep.
It's probably still worth it in all honesty. So I guess I'm getting at least 3 copies of Jaheira, Friend of the Forest.
Awesome. So Abdel Adrian Gorian's Ward is the first one I want to talk about.
And is a mouthful.
It's a lot. And it's a mono white uncommon. So it's like not really usually my thing. But it does fit one of my decks so perfectly. I love it so much for it. And that is my Livio and Ludovic Flicker deck. But let me tell you about Abdel Adrian here real quick. So it is a 5 mana 4/4. So for 4 and a white, you get a 4/4 human warrior that says when Abdel Adrian Gorian's Ward enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel Adrian leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. Now, this is also one of those legendary creatures that does have choose a background. But again, this is going to go in the 99 of my Livio and Ludovic Flicker deck. And I think the idea behind this card is to build around the flicker mechanic or the blink mechanic anyways, to just try to, get advantage of enter the battlefield triggers. But in addition, this can save your board. If you can somehow blink it at instant speed when someone casts a board wipe or something, you can blink your entire board out of existence underneath them. Yes, you'll create a lot of 1/1s. Maybe you can do it as a type of fog, blink them, create all the different 1/1s, block with those 1/1s. You can even block with him. If he dies, then you can bring all of your stuff back. But my deck particularly focuses around those enter the battlefield triggers and attacking with a lot of these small creatures for incremental damage turn in and turn out. So all of these 1/1s are going to help me go wide and win with this deck. And it even works really well with the enter the battlefield ping triggers like Perforos, God of the Forge, and that kind of stuff. So if you are running any sort of enter the battlefield token type of strategies that does take advantage of that, you definitely could look at Abdel Adrian here.
Yeah, I think this card is really good for that deck. I didn't see this card as anything that fit any of my decks, but I'm so excited that you really have a really great option to replace Stonehorn Dignitary, that trash card that no one likes.
No.
Oh wait,
that's not going anywhere.
Oh, that's not what you meant.
That card allows me to get to the turn 9 or 10 that I need to win with that deck,
or turn 14 or 15, or
whatever's
16.
necessary to win, Andy.
No, I think this card's really, really cool. Not something that I was expecting to see, but it does fit your Livio and Ludwig deck, and it is a slower deck, but it manages to make it there. And every time I go, nah, Mike doesn't really have a whole lot going on, and then all of a sudden I'm like, if I had just friggin' swung
incremental value,
4 turns.
Every deck I have is incremental value. Just don't let me have a board state, no matter how much I complain about being targeted. Don't let me have a board state. It's my strategy.
It's a good one. It's a good one. My next card is Illithid Harvester. So I like this card. It is the mono blue horror for 4. It's a 4/4 for 5. And it is also an adventure. So I can plant tadpoles, which is a sorcery speed spell, for X blue. It says tap X target creatures. They don't untap during their controller's next untap steps. Sorcery speed, maybe not the best. And then it is a 4/4 when you cast it, and it has a word that I believe is pronounced Ceramorphosis, which I assume is a D&D spell.
It looks like
it says, when Illithid Harvester enters the battlefield, turn any number of target tapped non-token creatures face down. They are 2/2 horror creatures. So I like this card a lot for my Rhoda and Timon Geist tap down deck. So Rhoda Geist Avenger and Timon Youthful Geist. It is my blue-white Voltron deck that's also controlled. The way that I built it, it's just tap down stuff. So whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, I can put counters on Rhoda. And then Timon has at the beginning of each combat tap one creature, one target creature. So here I can tap X target creatures on the adventure side. And then all those tapped creatures, when I cast it from the adventure, or I guess if I just cast it, it doesn't even have to be from the adventure. All those creatures that I tapped that are non-tokens, I can turn them face down almost like Ixodron. And then they are now just 2/2 creatures. And unless you can flip them face up, they're just 2/2 horrors. This also works really well in the Kadena Slinking Sorcerer deck that I don't have together anymore. And I talked about rebuilding, and it got some fun cards over the last 3 or 4 sets. Kadena did, and it might be worth bringing back out because it's sitting there in the commander shell. And the good thing is that for the most part, the Kadena deck is pretty parasitic, meaning none of the cards in that deck really work with other decks. I mean, things like Ristic Study or whatever that I had in there, I moved out, but if they're morph cards, I'm not really running morph cards in other decks. So they're all just sitting there. So this one also works really, really well because I can turn my morph creatures back down to remorph them to get their ability a second time. I think this is a double hit for my collection.
Yeah, this is one of 2 adventure cards I was looking at for Vega the Watcher as well. It doesn't particularly fit Vega's theme other than being able to be cast from exile. It does help you, I guess, get in for a swing. Potentially, but you don't get to draw cards on the first cast, only the second cast. But yeah, if you have a generic adventures deck too, this I think is actually a really good card to help with getting in for combat damage.
I actually think this is kind of just good if you're playing against your opponents who are swinging at you because their creatures are tapped. So then you turn them face down. So if someone's swinging with big things, now they're just 2/2s. I'm so sorry you spent all your mana and You know, I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be a blowout. Like when someone plays Ixodron, which is not played from my experience that often, this is going to do work.
Yeah. Turn someone's giant dragon board state into just a bunch of tutus. Bye-bye. They're all tutus.
They're all tutus, you know? Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm excited to play that card.
So we talked about some of the legendary creatures that have pick a background. So allow me to talk about the first background that I'm going to be including in the 99 of one of my decks. And that is Agent of the Iron Throne. This is an uncommon mono black backgrounds, 2 and a black, legendary enchantment that says commander creatures you own have whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is going to go actually probably a lot of my aristocrats decks, but particularly I think it works well in partner decks that care about this sacrifice or aristocrat strategy. I have an Abzan tokens deck that we've already alluded to earlier in this episode, which is Nadir, Agent of the Dusknell, and Sidar Kondo of Jamura, that cares all about tokens, and in particular Nadir actually gets more +1/+1 counters when tokens leave the battlefield. So sacrificing my creatures for mana, or anytime you crack a treasure, because that's an artifact leaving the battlefield, each of your opponents is going to lose 1 life. But with partners, and since these backgrounds give the ability to your commander, if you have 2 commanders out, both of them are going to get the ability, and you're actually going to be able to do 2, make everyone lose 2 life every single time one of these leaves the battlefield. So it's going to be just some redundancy for your effects like Zulaport, Cutthroat, and Blood Artist, and Bastion of Remembrance. And I understand they don't actually drain. You're not gaining life from that. But for 3 mana to be able to do double the amount of damage if you have both of your commanders out there. And it is on an enchantment, which we talk about being harder to remove. Bastion of Remembrance is also an enchantment. It also costs 3 mana. So this is, very, very, I think, correctly weighted. And then in comparison to Bastion of Remembrance, obviously that enchantment always works. And Agent of the Iron Throne is only going to work if you control your commanders. But it's a good thing that you always have access to your commanders in your command zone.
Yeah, this is a cool card. It just makes me think of Game of Thrones. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
There's
no middle ground. That's it. Now, one of my favorite card types is back, and another deck that I might bring back is my Gates deck. I played a Niv Mizzet Reborn deck many moons ago. I think it was taken apart in 2020, I'll be honest. I don't even think I played a game with it last year. But we got 9 new Gates in this set, one of them being Baldur's Gate. So I used to play a Maze's End Gates deck. Obviously there were some leaks early, so Maze's End had spiked. So I don't think it's too crazy expensive, but if you are looking to build a Gates deck, it's a win condition that requires one of your lands not be blown up. For some reason, no one ever plays land destruction except when I happen to run Gates, and they're like, oh, I do have this one thing that can destroy a land, but I never destroy one, so I'll destroy your land. And it never feels good. Or they exile like 2 cards and they hit 2 of your Gates. And before this, we only had 11 Gates. With getting 9 additional from this set, now it brings us to 20. So if an opponent exiles like 2 or 3 of them, you don't just lose, the game. Because before, my only win con at that point was just swinging with Niv Mizzet, which is not a bad way to win. It just, when you're trying to play with Maze's End and someone does blow that up, it feels it feels really bad because you're like, I'm literally in it for the long game.
Yeah.
But we're getting 9 new Gates. 5 of them are what people are referring to as the Thriving Gates. So the Thriving lands came from Jumpstart. And so they were lands that entered tapped, and they tapped for a single color, and then you chose another color, because when you combine those Jumpstart packs, they were all monocolored packs, so you could get like a dual color land for when you were drafting. Well, we basically got those on Gates. So there's 5 of them. There's Citadel Gate, there's Black Dragon Gate, Cliff Gate, Manor Gate, and Seagate. So they all tap for 1 color, and then when it enters the battlefield, you choose another color other than the one that it taps for. And then we got what I'm referring to as the Nykthos Nykthos Gate.
Okay.
It's not really, but it kind of is. So Baldur's Gate is a legendary gate, comes in untapped. We do have gates that come in untapped now, which is kind of exciting. And Baldur's Gate has pay 2 and tap it to add X mana of one color, where X is the number of other gates you control. So Nykthos taps to add mana for your devotion to a color. This adds for your gates.
This is gate coffers. This is instead of swamps, it's gates.
Okay, this is gate coffers. Baldur's Gate is gate coffers. We also have one that comes in untapped, like Amulet of Vigor. So there is Gond Gate. It says gate you control enter the battlefield untapped. Taps for colorless, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color that a gate you control could produce. So this is really important. Amulet of Vigor is a card that I only ran in my gates deck because it made the deck function not so slowly. So this is really gate. There's a pump gate, Basilisk Gate. So this one is taps to add colorless, or you pay 2 and tap it. Target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of gates you control at sorcery speed only. So you have to do it before combat. But I mean, if you're running a big creature and you have, you don't have anything else to do, that's fine. It's also just a gate, so who really cares? And then you have a filter gate, which is Heap Gate. So Heap Gate taps for colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it to add a mana of any color, or pay 1 and tap it and tap an untapped gate you control to create a treasure token. So this brings us to 20 gates. 4 of them now enter untapped. Heap Gate is untapped. Gond Gate is untapped. Baldur's Gate and Basilisk Gate. So those last 4 that I mentioned are all untapped gates. I will be bringing my gates deck back out. I'm very excited. I will run all 20 gates and then probably a few basics because I need some other things that'll enter untapped. But this will be fun, and Maze's End folks have more options now. I think Baldur's Gate's a really cool card. Just that it's what do we call it? Gate coffers. Yep, gate coffers. So I'm excited to play gates.
Yeah, this is super, super cool. And, they produced enough gates where you can do a Maze's End win condition with the new legendary creature, 9 Fingers Keen, which is only available in the Sultai colors. So you can do, but you're going to have the original problems that Maze's End players had that Andy talked about of not
if you
having,
lose one, you're done for.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. So good luck to you Gates players out there.
Thank you. We say thank you.
I'm instead going to be using some tried and true methods of cards just printed in slightly different ways for my Osgear the Reconstructor deck. Some brand new artifacts, including Prized Statue and Nimble Right Schematic. So Prized Statue is a 2 mana artifact that says when Prized Statue enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you create a treasure token. And Nimble Right Schematic is a 2 mana artifact that says when Nimble Right Schematic enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. So in my Osgear the Reconstructor deck, my goal, other than to make everyone mill all of the cards in their library using as many copies of Mesmeric Orb as possible, is to just have a lot of incremental artifact value. And these are exactly what you want. Osgear sacrifices artifacts by using 1 generic mana to pump creatures on the board, and then uses X and tap Osgear at sorcery speed to exile an artifact from your graveyard to make 2 token copies of it to put it on the battlefield. So with 1 Prize Statue, you're going to be able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 treasures just from one particular permanent, and then 6 construct tokens, which actually is a relevant creature type in the deck because of Steel Overseer, which is a construct lord. It puts +1/+1 counters on your constructs. But I'm already running cards like Ichor Wellspring, which is doing the same thing but allowing you to draw cards. Mycosynth Wellspring, which is doing the same thing but putting basic lands into your hand. And Servo Schematic, which is doing the same thing but making servo tokens instead of construct tokens. So why not add 2 more things that are going to just be really good incremental damage in your artifact decks? It works in stuff that isn't Osgear too, but making tokens is an Osgear specialty, and these things make tokens even when they die. So
yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just once you get a small engine going, like the Ichor Wellspring and Mycosynth Wellspring cards like that, they're just good to see, and having additional copies of these I think is really, really good. And they're super affordable. These are I mean, these are one of them is about the prize statue is like $1 and the Nimble Rate schematics 50 cents. But once people open them, they might be 1 cent and 5 cents.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're
Who
both
knows?
commons. They're both commons. They're going to end up in people's draft chaff if they aren't running an artifact strategy or any way to sacrifice it. Even though when you are drafting prize statue, you can basically use it as a 2 mana ramp you for 1 turn. 2 mana, make a treasure. It just works that way.
And then you have an artifact. Maybe you can sack. There's backgrounds that have like sack an artifact, deal damage. So, there's synergy. I want to talk about a card that I kind of went on the record in our Discord to say I believe is going to be the most expensive card in this set. It's a card that I am probably, unfortunately, going to run in all of my white decks. I say this unfortunately because I've talked about this before. I really don't like homogenization, but I think white is now getting cards that we wanted years ago. So I think we've got a long way to go until some of these aren't homogenous. But that's Archivist of Ogma. So this is a 2/2 halfling cleric for 1 and a white. It has flash, and whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain a life and you draw a card. The card's already pre-ordering at $22 for non-foil,
Nice.
just shy of $40 for foil. I personally expect this to be the most expensive card in the set. I would love to be wrong. But if not, it's in the top 3. And I'm going to use that qualifier, so I'm not majorly wrong. But the number of times that your opponent, some folks were talking and said, well, this is only going to work in CDH where people are searching a lot. The problem is, it's not even a problem. In regular, non-competitive, just regular commander, high power, I mean, everything's a 7 anyway, so whatever. People are searching their library at least once every time around the table. I would expect that I'm going to draw at least 3 cards a game. That's what I would guess, because you flash us in when someone is playing Cultivate. You flash us in when someone is playing Kodama's Reach. You flash us in when someone's actually fetching, whether it's on a Evolving Wilds or it's on an Arid Mesa. Whatever it is, your opponent is searching their library. So you flash us in and you're going to gain a life and draw a card. I don't really care about the gain 1 life thing, but the draw a card is crazy on this. And I fully expect this is, and this is not limited to once per turn. They left that clause off of this card.
Yeah.
So the number of times I've done it, you've done it, where you say, all right, I'm going to play Kodama's Reach, but also while I'm in here to speed it up, I'm also going to search for X. That is 2 searches. Even though you're doing it to speed it up, I'm going to draw 2 and gain 2 life.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And this costs 2. If you go first, people are tutoring on turn 2, 3, 4, and then I feel like the game starts to get going once people have fixed their mana and they've smoothed out their whatever they're waiting for. This card is going to draw so many cards. I need a few copies, please.
So check this out, Andy. We have talked about how we've seen Kodama of the West Tree becoming more and more of a popular card. And you might think that Kodama of the West Tree says that you get to search for all of your basics at the same time. Every single one of those creatures that deals damage is an individual search for a basic land. So if you're up against a Kodama of the West Tree, not necessarily commander. If it's a commander, for sure, you go find this. You mulligan until you have this in your starting hand. But if you see this on the battlefield, maybe there's some way that you could search for it and get it out there, because you are going to gain a lot of life and draw a lot of cards.
Yeah, I think this card's fantastic. It's exactly what I was looking for. There's some other cards that came out that are white as well that are in the Commander set. I know that we're not specifically going over cards from the Commander set, but I think that it's worth at least mentioning the card. But it is the Deep Gnome Terramancer. It's another 2/2 for 2 with flash, 1 and a white, but it says whenever 1 or more lands enter the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played. So this is a Kodama's Reach, a Cultivate, whatever it is, Nature's Lore, 3 visits, so it puts us on the battlefield. I'm not sure if they're totally to the battlefield, but there's so many of these. It says you may search your library for planes and put it onto the battlefield tapped. This one is limited to once each turn, but I don't care. I also think that card is insane.
Yeah.
So they really are giving white things that they're giving people what they've been asking for. I don't think that white is being it's still considered maybe a catch-up color, but I feel like Archivist of Ogma does not feel catch-up wise. And then the Terramancer is also not catch-up. You could be ahead, and it doesn't say if you have less lands. It just says when they do it. So you can actually ramp ahead. Very excited that white is getting some new spice.
Yes. But as we know, red gets all of the spiciest spice. And so that is why we have to finish our list of cards we're adding to our decks here with a mono red card that I think both of us have a deck for, as long as I am not misremembering, and this deck is still together for you right now. And that is Furbolg Flutist, a mono red card that really would be really good in stuff that cares about making tons of copies of them and maybe swinging for multiple combats, like my Delina Wild Mage deck or maybe your Ryonia Fire Dancer deck.
Hey, it's together.
Yeah, so Furbolg Flutist is a 6 mana, 4 red giant bard with 4 power and 4 toughness with enthralling performance. When Furbolg Flutist enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature you don't control until end of turn, untap it. It gains haste and myriad until end of turn. So we know that in our decks, we're trying to make a bunch of copies of our own creatures and swing with them. But we also have some cards like Coercive Recruiter and stuff that does steal our opponent's creatures, and making multiple copies of these Coercive Recruiter-like effects to steal all of our opponent's creatures is a great thing to do to swing into an empty board. So the only thing better than that is swinging each one of those creatures at every single one of our opponents, because now they have Myriad. And even on top of that, you can now steal your opponent's commanders, swing with them, and on the Myriad trigger actually keep the Myriad trigger token copies of them and sacrifice the original copies of the commanders to the legend rule. And now you have a removal spell for your opponent's commanders now too. So I really like it. I love it. And
if you're running a Mirror Box or a Sakashima deck, it's not gonna work there. But in most cases, I don't think you'll do a lot of damage. This is really good. It's, I also run Zealous Conscripts. It steals opponent's creatures. They gain haste. Really, really a good card. I have no words. It's just really good.
Well, it's high mana cost, but it's only like 1 more mana than our typical creatures that steal other people's creatures. So for 1 more mana, you get Myriad. But notably, you cannot target your own creatures, and a lot of times those Zealous Conscripts, like you'll have a Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker or something, just a backup infinite. So this won't be able to combo with your own creatures that way. So that's a slight downside, but I think the upside here is way bigger.
Still worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Still worth it. All right, let's talk about the decks that we have that got the most cards from this set. I actually mentioned one of them earlier, which was Illithid Harvester, that is going into my Rhoda and Timid deck. It's funny that my Rhoda and Timid deck is actually getting, from what I've seen and from my evaluation so far, there's a lot of cards. This is a very large set, but there's a lot of tap down cards. So Illithid Harvester, which is the card that taps down X creatures and then they flip them face down. But I've also got the card Cone of Cold. It's an uncommon that is it adds some chaos, which I don't normally like, but it's really there's really no downside to the die here from my perspective. It's roll a d20, 1 through 9. I tap all creatures my opponents control. So Rhoda just gets ginormous. So the worst roll that happens on 10 to 19, tap all creatures my opponents control. They don't untap during the controller's next untap step. So that's actually really nasty too. And then finally, if I actually get a nat 20, tap all creatures your opponents control. Those creatures don't untap during their next unstap until my next turn. Creatures your opponents control also enter the battlefield tapped.
That's awesome. That's gross.
Yes. It's an uncommon card. It is a sorcery, but I'm playing a lot of my spells at sorcery speed already because I want to swing with my commander. So I'm doing a lot of things pre-combat. I'm not waiting until my opponent's end step to cast an instant speed tap spell. There are some, but Cone of Cold really works out with this deck. And then the final one, which I do not know how to pronounce, Githzari Monk. I think that's right. It's a 3/2 flash flying monk for 4 and a white that has psychic defense. When it enters the battlefield, tap all creatures you don't control. So this one is a flash speed spell. So I can do it at the end of someone's turn. I think this is really good to protect you from losing to a swing, or you can do it to help, I guess, maybe your opponents. If you make a deal with somebody and say, well, I'm going to tap all creatures my opponents control, and now I pass to you, you untap, you have free reign to hit somebody so you don't swing at me. This is a really good political tool.
You could also use this as a combat trick, right? Swing with Rhoda, and they go, oh, it's not going to kill me. I don't block. And then you flash this out. It becomes commander damage lethal.
Yes, you can absolutely do that too, because you're tapping all creatures you don't control. So nailing all 3 opponents at one time, if they all have, let's say they all have even 3 to 6 creatures. I mean, if they have like 6, that's 18. Rhoda is a 3/3. That's 21.
Yeah,
so
that's perfect math. You got it right on the. You guessed the right number right there.
I guess I was just pulling that off, out of thin air.
Yeah.
No, I planned it. I'm so smart. I planned that. So that's my final card. So I think Rhoda and Tim are getting more than anything else. There's a lot of fun cards in this set. So a lot of commander decks are going to get something. And I think once I see some of these cards played, I might go, oh, okay, I guess I didn't think about that. This probably works really well in a deck. So Rhoda and Timon, is it for me?
Yeah, I'm hoping that I have the same realization as you and find some more cards, because I did personally kind of struggle to pick one deck that was going to get the most. So I picked a deck that I'm going to try the most things in, but I'm not going to say for sure that these are going to be mainstays in the deck, because the deck's pretty brand new. This is my Hensy Toolbox Tory deck, from Streets of New Capenna all the way from 6 weeks ago when we did.
It's been a whole 6 weeks.
I've gotten to play this deck, I think, about 4 or 5 times, though, since then, since building it. So, I've seen a lot of the deck and a lot to what it has to offer. And the deck really cares about really impactful creatures, obviously, that are higher than 4 mana value, because Hensy will allow those creatures that are 4 mana value or higher to have the blitz mechanic, allowing them to have haste, get in right away for damage, sacrifices themselves at the end of the turn, but then you get to draw a card. So the big ones that stuck out to me are the Ancient Dragons. So we're in the Jund colors, so we're talking about the Ancient Brass Dragon, the Ancient Copper Dragon, and the Ancient Bronze Dragon. And the Ancient Bronze Dragon is actually very borderline for this deck. So we're going to start with the Brass Dragon. The Ancient Brass Dragon, for 7 mana, 5 black, you get a 7/6 flying Elder Dragon. This is whenever Ancient Brass Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. When you do, put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. So since the blitz mechanic is sacrificing our creatures at the end of the turn anyways, our graveyard is going to be filling up with creatures eventually. 7 mana is towards the top end of the Hensy deck. You're going to be able to blitz it out actually for 6 mana at the bare minimum, because Hensy reduces the cost when you do blitz out your creatures, depending on how many times you've cast Hensy from your command zone for the game. So Ancient Brass Dragon being able to bring back our own creatures, with only upside being able to bring back our opponent's creatures as well, depending on what kind of roll we get. We're only going to keep it around for 1 turn. I imagine most of these Ancient Dragons are going to be, I would call them lightning rods, but lightning bolt doesn't kill them. So Path to Exile rods or Swords to Plowshare rods. So they're only going to be out for a turn anyways. I might as well try to get damage with them as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's cool.
Ancient Copper Dragon is going to be doing making you treasures based on a d20 roll. Ancient Copper Dragon actually costs 1 less mana, so it's only for 4 red. You get a 6/5 flyer. You get to roll that d20 when you do damage to create treasures. There's a 75% chance you're at least going to get your mana back, assuming you've only cast Hensy once from your command zone. It only costs 5 mana to get this Copper Dragon out. But there's also a 50% chance you're going to at least double your mana, and you're also going to be able to draw a card when the dragon leaves the battlefield. So it's just really, really good value here. Ancient Bronze Dragon, on that d20 roll, you're actually going to be putting +1/+1 counters on each of up to 2 creatures. This can help keep Hensy around, but other than Hensy, there really isn't a creature that stays on the board for very long. They all get sacrificed, and I do run the enchantment Greater Good, which sacrifices a creature and you draw cards equal to its power and then discard 3. But that's the only card in the deck that actually would care about the power level of that card.
Yeah. So this or for dice rolling for a D20, the average die roll is actually 10.5. So with the red dragon and the black dragon, you're probably going to get a lot happening here. I mean, the green dragon, it does stuff. But for 10.5, I'll take it, if that's my average. Hopefully you roll 20s. I wish you all D20
roll 20s rolls every single time. But if we want to look at something that is a little bit less chaotic, a card that I was actually a little bit low on, because I was looking at the wrong decks for it, It's Chain Devil. So for 3 and a black, you get a devil creature. So it's a 4 power, 2 toughness with the ability Animate Chains. When Chain Devil enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. So this is your Fleshbag Marauder type effect or your Plague Crafter. But it does say non-token. So if you are up against someone who has a token strategy that has a lot of token fodder to sacrifice to your Fleshbag Marauder type edict effects, Chain Devil gets around that, forces them to hopefully sacrifice their commander or something like that. But the one part I looked at it, I said, when I first saw the card, I said, oh, it's a 4 mana Fleshbag Marauder. Why would I want to pay 1 more mana for that? But hensy actually requires your creatures to be at least 4 mana. So this actually fits really well in hensy. I'm going to sacrifice it to itself right away, get around my opponent's token strategies, draw a card while also edicting my opponents. And it's only going to cost me 3 mana in hensy anyway. So this is my Fleshbag Marauder.
Yeah, I like that your notes say you can blitz this hot with hensy. I think it's out, but I like it because it's hot.
It's
hensy.
Very hot. It's very
hot in hensy. So let's talk about decks we want to build. This one, I actually had 2 options here. I do think that Choose a Background's pretty cool. So the first one here is Volo. Itinerant Scholar here. So a 2/3 human wizard, 2 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, create Volo's Journal, which is a colorless artifact token that has hexproof. And whenever you cast a creature spell, note one of its creature types that hasn't been noted for this artifact. And then Volo has pay 2, tap it, and you draw a card for each type that you noted on Volo's Journal. I think it's cool. It's card advantage in the command zone, and actually on your commander. You're probably never going to attack with Volo because you just want to cast out a bunch of different creatures and creature types. I think pairing this with cards like Master Chef as the background, which is 2 and a green. So commanders you control have this creature enters the battlefield with the +1/+1 counter on it, and other creatures you control enter with counters on them. That's pretty cool. And then Noble Heritage is a white background with creature or commander creatures you control you own. This one is own. Actually, so is Master Chef. They might all be owned. But this one is commander creatures you own have when this creature enters the battlefield, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does this, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. It's kind of a political way to play it. I'm not sure if green or blue, actually black or red, is the color I want to go with. I haven't actually decided on the background. I just want to play out a bunch of creatures. This one is different than the previous Volo in that I can play changelings because it doesn't care about creatures that are in my graveyard. So when you name a creature type, you can name anything except for unsets. I did get judge confirmation. I cannot name like designer or other things. So this one seems really cool. And then the other one is Karlach, Fury of Avernus. So this is the mono red tiefling barbarian, a 5/4 for 4 and a red. When you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike till end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat. So you have an additional combat in your command zone. I have an additional combat deck, which we've talked about on the show before. It's my coin flip deck, but I think I'd want to play this with Veteran Soldier as my background. So 1 and a white. So I'd play in the red-white colors. Commander creatures you own have when this creature attacks a player. If no opponent has more life than that player, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white soldier that's tapped and attacking that player. So you're getting more creatures on the battlefield. You're going to get an extra combat phase. And additionally, there's more extra combat cards that are in red-white, like Aurelia or Resurgence on the actual flip. It's not even a fuse card. It's the split card, response Resurgence. Yep. And then Waves of Aggression. So if you want to play a red-white deck that just has a bunch of extra combat, this is the one that I'm going with. So those are the 2 that I think I might be interested in building. They both just seem like a lot of fun.
It does seem like a lot of fun. I was thinking about that Karlach, Fury of Avernus, along with the pirate background that makes it so that you can't block. Or opponents can't block if you're swinging at the person with the most life. But that might work too well to get extra combats and be unblockable all the time. So instead, I want to do something with dice rolling because I like rolling dice. So Will Blade of Frontiers is going to be my pick, at least for the first legendary creature with a background build that I'm going to have. This is a 2-mana human warlock. For 1 and a red, you get a 1/1 that says if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice +1 and ignore the lowest roll. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a +1/+1 counter on Will Blade of Frontiers. So in combination, I pretty much have to choose blue if I want to be well enough supported in dice
Yeah,
rolling.
sure.
You can. The only one you really can't pick is white. I think white only has like 3 cards that roll dice or something like that. So I decided I'm going to go into blue. My favorite blue background for this particular card is going to be Shameless Charlatan for 1 in a blue. This is the background that says commander creatures you own have pay 2 in a blue. This creature becomes a copy of another target creature. Notably, this creature is still going to be your commander. So if I have Will with a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, and I turn it into something that has a big enough base power and toughness to actually get in there for 21 commander damage, I'm going to be able to get in there for 21 commander damage a lot easier that way than the 1/1 base power. But on top of that, just so I have something in my own deck that can do that, just playing a card like Blighted Agent, 2-mana human rogue 1/1 that is unblockable and has Infect. So as soon as I have 9 +1/+1 counters on Will, turn it into a Blighted Agent and kill someone with some Infect damage.
So you can add Dismiss into Dreams into that deck whenever you target a creature. So your commander becoming a copy of another target creature makes them sacrifice it. And you can also add in Willbender to steal them. I'm digging it. I'm hating it, but I'm digging it.
Yes. Now, there's a lot of inklings out there about Mirko, Lord of Bones as well, which is the Abzan god that can turn your creatures that die, your non-token creatures that die, into enchantments that are no longer creatures. I think this is a super huge combo based deck. There's already
for sure.
We're going to be talking about it probably at length next week, and I just want to make sure that not everyone is building this deck before I go out and build this deck. So if I don't see many out in the wild, I will build this deck, but otherwise it's just going to be legendary creatures with backgrounds for me.
Quick, everybody in the Discord, build Mirko, Lord of Bones, because if you do, I won't play against it as much. We'll play it.
Cool.
Actually, everybody just build it, because this is pretty cool. Turning them into enchantments and lose all other card types just so you have their abilities as static abilities.
It goes
so cool.
Or even tap abilities and stuff. I know people are already talked about Devoted Druid, obviously, to be able to add mana and put -1/-1 counters on the thing that isn't a creature anymore. So
yeah, I like it a lot. Well, this week is pre-release for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. So everybody who's going, please have fun out there. And we're going to be back next week with the Commander Spellbook combos for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. So make sure you tune in next week if you're looking for new ways to lose or win, right? Lose to or win with.
Lose to or win with.
Yeah. Or lose with because someone counters it.
I don't know. Wrong.
If you get it wrong, yeah. I mean, I guess it could literally be any of them. But as always, we want to thank you for hanging out with us this week. I'm on Twitter if you want to chat with me at Andy Flory.
And I'm on Twitter at Wormcoil Engine. Of course, a special thanks to Ryan Nichols and Chris Wolf, who handles all of the stuff behind the scenes. Thank you so much for the both of you. And to all you listeners at home, thank you for listening. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for your emails and everything. And we will talk to you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.